So Ukraine is out of Patriot missile interceptors while Russia is ramping up missile production. That's a problem, to say the least. And I don't think it's a stretch to say this is the biggest issue facing Ukraine today. In fact, I don't think it's a stretch to say this is the biggest issue facing all of us today. The United States, our NATO allies, other allies around the world, nobody has enough missile interceptors. We're just seeing it play out in real time in Ukraine. I mean, last night with Russian missiles largely unchallenged in the Ukrainian skies, they were able to kill 15 people and wound more than 40 in the Ukrainian capital city of Kyiv. Now, the reason that Ukraine does not have enough Patriot interceptors is because none of their allies have enough. So nobody can afford to give them or even sell them more. Our European allies don't have enough. They want more. They've given a fair amount to Ukraine. The United States does not have enough, and we aren't producing enough. And I think that's been pretty clear in the current conflict with Iran, where we ran those stockpiles down very quickly. And the issue that we're coming into right now is adversaries, in this case, Russia, is producing more missiles on a monthly and yearly basis, and we are producing interceptors. All right? We're just seeing the effects of that in Ukraine today. Now, CNN reported a few days ago that they're the first media outlet to be given access to a Patriot on Ukrainian territory, so Ukrainian officials could reveal one fact. The country has pretty much run out of interceptors. They say its chief engineer, who gave only his first name for security reasons, said he had not seen a Patriot launcher fire for 6 weeks, and that Ukraine has been reluctant to specify exactly how many interceptors, if any, it has left. And if we go back a couple weeks, there was a stretch there where 100% of Russian ballistic missiles were getting through and striking targets in Ukraine. Now, Ukraine has, I don't know that they've ever necessarily had over a large-scale attack, a 100% interception rate of Russian missiles. That's incredible anywhere around the world. But we were seeing the opposite. We were seeing a 0% interception rate, so much so that, according to Bloomberg, Ukraine actually stopped a couple weeks ago reporting how many missiles Russia is firing during their attacks. All right, they say the Air Defense Forces has changed its reporting format as a security measure in response to Russian strikes. But again, we were seeing 100% of munitions get through. The issue here is that Ukraine does not have the munitions to try to shoot down enough of these Russian missiles. They can and they are shooting down Russian drones. They can and they are, at times, able to shoot down a number of cruise missiles. Ballistic missiles are a different beast altogether. It's just a very challenging target compared to a cruise missile. Look, the cruise missile flies lower, generally follows the path of a manned aircraft, so it's easier to pick up on radar and has a larger signature for the radar or for the interceptor. So cruise missiles can be intercepted with a wide variety of means. There's very few systems around the world. The Patriot's really kind of the leading one right now that can effectively intercept ballistic missiles. And that is what Russia is raining down on Ukraine day after day. The problem here is we have never made enough of these. The issue's been there for a long time, and we are seeing it play out right now that we have ignored that. All right, Jack Watling, talking in The Guardian a few days ago, said the U.S. and licensed manufacturers in Germany and Japan are able to produce about 840 Patriot interceptors a year, or 70 per month. So that sounds like a lot, I think. I don't know. I guess you need some context, right? In comparison, Russia produces about 750 Iskander missiles per year and is looking to increase production. In addition, Russia uses air-launched Kinzhal ballistic missiles and repurposed air defense missiles to conduct strikes, along with its arsenal of cruise missiles and drones. To have a high probability of success, it is generally recommended to fire 2 to 3 interceptors against each ballistic missile. Another key component there is they're comparing all of the U.S. and German and Japanese production of Patriot interceptors to Russia. There are other countries that have missiles that pose a threat to the United States than just Russia. I think we just saw how this played out in our fight with Iran. So we're not producing enough month to month to keep up with one adversary, and we're already falling behind. Now, to give you an idea of just how far behind, that stat, again, 70 interceptors per month, according to a new statement from the Ukrainian Defense Intelligence, they say Russia produced at least 250 missiles last month alone. That's between the KH-101 and caliber cruise missiles and the Iskander ballistic missiles. So to be clear, it's not 250 ballistic missiles, which are the hardest to intercept and where the Patriot really shines compared to other systems, but the Patriot is still used, if you have it available, against cruise missiles. Unfortunately, we've also seen it used at times against drones. Watling there talking about how 2 to 3 interceptors against each ballistic missile is recommended. I'm not an air defender. I don't know, but air defense munitions miss. They malfunction. So depending on the value of the target that's protecting, we have seen in multiple occasions in recent years, well more than 2 or 3 fired at a target trying to bring it down. Now, Watling continued by saying, at this point, Kyiv must plan for a winter with severely disrupted power and disperse and fortify life support systems such as water, sanitation, power, and heating. And this is what I was talking about earlier. Wars, this one included, are generally not and historically have not been won with air power or missiles alone. I don't expect this to be any different. It's not like these strikes are going to ramp up and all of a sudden Ukraine is just going to capitulate. The challenge is that as Russia is able to expand their target set, so let's step back, say 6 months, and if maybe 1 out of 20 strikes for Russia was getting through and causing damage to a facility, if now all of a sudden it is 10 out of 10 or 20 out of 20, they are able to destroy these facilities faster, which means they can expand their target set and start going after more things. So they're using fewer munitions to have a greater effect. This kind of snowballs over time. And we should expect to see these Russian missiles going after critical infrastructure in Kyiv and elsewhere in the very near future. Watling says the real reason here is that NATO members have abjectly failed in defense planning. The numbers in this equation have been known since before 2022, and yet the investments to expand Patriot production or mature alternatives such as the Franco-Italian SAM-PT have not been made. Such a level of complacency is devastating for Ukraine today, but it also risks Europe being left of defenses in the future. It remains remarkable that Europe, watching the consequences unfold on its very borders, has remained so idle. So again, there is another system that is supposedly pretty effective against one of our NATO allies. Actually just went with this Eurosam version out of France and Italy, I believe, over the Patriot. So by all means, it is effective. It's just nowhere near the scale of the Patriot. And again, nobody has invested enough to really build these out. In the United States right now, we've got agreements to agree to maybe build more in the coming years, but this is a problem today. It's a problem we've seen coming, and I know people like to paint everything as partisan or blame it on one politician or the other. Good news, you can blame it on all of the politicians here. This has been an issue for years on end, and we haven't addressed it. And the major problem here is the missiles are still being made in Russia. Right? They're being produced at a faster rate. And, if we want to go to Iran as an example, they likely have more missiles right now than the U.S. has interceptors. Who knows about Iranian production right now? Russia is actively making them, and they're outproducing us. The deputy chief of Ukraine's defense intelligence, Major General Skibitsky, apologies in the pronunciation there, just speaking with RBC Ukraine, and all of these sources, of course, linked in the description below, said overall, across the main types of missile systems, Russia is currently exceeding its monthly production targets by 110 to 120%. According to their intelligence, Russia's July production target for KH-101 missiles was met at 140%. Caliber at 111%, for KH-35, 200%, and for Iskander ballistic missiles, Iskander-M, 110%. So all of these missiles that are at times increasingly getting through, are being prioritized. He said, quote, Moscow is prioritizing the production of certain weapons and reallocating funding towards them. We've been seeing this trend since roughly the second quarter of the year, and it makes sense. If certain types of missiles are reaching their targets, they increase production of those weapons. Passes the common sense test, doesn't it? And that's what we're seeing Russia do right now. And you have to assume that people around the world, while we look at this conflict, we say, what can we take away? And right now we're talking about more interceptors. What do you think our adversaries are doing as well? The same thing. They're seeing a shortage of U.S. interceptors. And for all of the frustration and the anger and the leaks and how could this possibly be public information about the U.S. stockpiles, you don't even need that information. You could just look at what's playing out in Ukraine day in and day out and realize that Ukraine does not have enough interceptors. They can't get any more. And anybody really can look at that and say, oh, there must not be enough to go around. If all of a sudden, even if it took years, Russian missiles are getting through day after day after day, there's clearly a shortage there. Now, in terms of what they're targeting, again, talking to the spreading of this target set, the general said, quote, the enemy sees our defense industry as a serious threat and is closely monitoring 2 key areas. The first is our ballistic missile capabilities. They are trying to prevent us from moving to serial production of these weapons. The second is everything related to UAVs and FPV drones. Now, we don't know exactly what Russia hit overnight in any of these strikes, for what it's worth. Russia does not release satellite imagery showing the effectiveness or what they hit or the damage to these facilities. Just interesting, all right? No doubt damage has been done. We've seen multiple accounts of munitions facilities and manufacturers have to move locations over the past few months and years so they certainly are having an impact on the Russian defense industry. Ukrainian President Zelensky said that last night apartment buildings, residential buildings, a children's school, and a hospital, or children's hospital, and a school were at least caught in the collateral damage of this strike. But what we're likely to see here is a focus on the defense industry and then a shift as more and more of those facilities are destroyed, a shift over to more of the civilian infrastructure, especially as we approach the winter months. Now, in terms of last night's attack, the Ukrainian Air Force says they were able to down 186 total munitions, but we don't actually know exactly how many were fired, which is a pretty significant change from how Ukraine has reported in recent months. Again, the purpose here is they don't want to put out ballistic missile data and let Russia know how many got through. If we're being overly optimistic, I would say that maybe they do shoot down a few ballistic missiles. Maybe they do have a few Patriot interceptors, and they don't want Russia to know that. But that's probably veered into the cope category of optimism. Realistically, they're just not putting out battle damage assessments for Russia to gain more information from that. Ukrainian President Zelensky, in speaking to the attacks last night that, again, our understanding right now killed 15 and wounded 40, he said, in the capital, residential buildings have been damaged, including an apartment building where the upper floors were destroyed, as well as a children's hospital and a school. Unfortunately, while Moscow is investing in ballistic missiles and escalation, the world's response to such attacks is not always adequate. And as long as Ukraine does not have enough anti-ballistic defense systems, Russia will not seriously consider peace. There it is, and I feel like we've hit on this for a long time now. When Russia feels like they have any degree of an upper hand, they are less likely to sit down at the negotiating table. No indications in recent months that Russia is even considering some sort of ceasefire or peace deal. Zelensky says, we're doing everything we can to ensure protection, and work is ongoing on the Frysha program every day. That's the domestically manufactured Ukrainian interceptor. It's a very, very challenging product to come out with. It's not just strong arming that the Patriot is like the only system really used, especially throughout the West. It's a very complex, very expensive capability to put together. So I hope Ukraine can do that. I hope they can do it at cost. I think that'd be good for everyone except Russia, China, and Iran, but that's a big ask. Zelensky says, however, interceptors for Patriot systems are still not available, and they are needed every day. Each additional missile saves the lives of our people. The Patriots aren't going to be available, not anytime soon. In fact, the closest we probably came to that was, or honestly, that wasn't even that close. The agreement, verbal agreement, I suppose, where President Trump said that Zelensky and Ukraine would have a license to manufacture interceptors inside of Ukraine. That seems to, at the very least, have been held up right now, if not altogether scrapped. But even that, you're talking about probably a year plus down the road before the first interceptors are actually put to use. So the Patriot's not a solution for Ukraine, not right now. And they're going to have to find some way around this. Now, one of those is going after the Archer. Instead of trying to shoot down the arrows, you go after the Archer. That goes back to Russia trying to target some of the Ukrainian defense industry. As the general said there, Moscow prioritizing making sure that they're not able to mass produce some of these long-range ballistic missiles of their own. That will be a step in the right direction, but Russia has so many different launchers and so many different platforms that's really just going to be a drop in the bucket in the very near term. Eliminating all of Russia's launch capabilities from an offensive standpoint is going to take a long, long time. Now, quick fundraiser update. We've got a new video I wanted to share with you all from our friends in the 2nd Battalion Seraphims. It's a new drone unit that we're supporting out of the 104th Territorial Defense Brigade. We just delivered the 24th vehicle, and thanks to your generosity, we are well on our way to delivering 36 total this year. Now, you can learn more about that campaign at the link in the description below. And of course, check out the video to you all as a thank you here in just a second. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.
Вітаємо. Ми військові 2-го батальйону безпілотних систем «Серафими» 104-ї окремої бригади ТРО. На зв'язку з вами з Донецького напрямку, а саме з Константинівки. Хочемо передати велику подяку та привітання для компанії Car of Ukraine та Бандеремобілі. Окрему подяку передаємо Престону Стюарту та його спільноті. Завдяки вам ми стаємо швидшими, мобільнішими. Та наші воїни можуть добиратися і виїжджати з тих позицій, де практично це зробити буває неможливо. Дякуємо за вашу підтримку. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!